The galaxy had slept for 3 millennia. In the vast expanse where stars once exploded in furious conflict, where civilizations rose and fell beneath the shadow of warships and plasma storms, silence had become the new constant. The conquered of species, an alliance enforced by the iron will of the Varaxian hegemony, had stitched peace across the stars. Every race had agreed to lay down arms, to settle disputes in endless diplomatic councils, to bury the savage glory of war beneath a veneer of order. The price was complacency. On the edges of the known galaxy, far from the glittering capital worlds where polished diplomats spoke in measured tones, a different mood simmered. The Psi-Leth, a once proud warrior, race now reduced to a minor footnote in the conquered, had grown restless. Their home system, a cluster of resource-poor planets on the fringe, had been strangled by Varaxian trade embargoes for decades. Their culture, once fierce and vibrant, was fading beneath bureaucratic control. Deep in the shadowed corridors of the Psi-Leth Rebellion's command ship, a young general paced nervously. Her name was Kayla, and unlike the diplomats who avoided conflict, she believed the only language the galaxy respected was strength. "The moon will not fall without a fight," she said, her voice low and sharp. Her advisors, grim-faced and battle-worn, nodded. The order was simple: send a message that the era of peace was over. 3 days later, Varaxian orbital cannons fired the first devastating salvo. A moon orbiting a Psi-Leth mining colony was vaporized, billions of innocents wiped from existence, in an instant. The blast echoed through communications relays like a thunderclap, proof that beneath the polished diplomacy lay a latent brutality, waiting to be unleashed. Back on Earth, in the dim glow of the Lunar Command Center, an old man watched the news, feed with a faint, knowing smile. "Finally," he whispered. Dr. Marcus Renard had lived through the war centuries ago, when humanity had been forged in fire and blood. After the last great conflict ended, humans had voluntarily withdrawn from galactic politics, focusing inward to rebuild and evolve on their homeworld. To the rest of the galaxy, Earth was a relic, forgotten, silent, and insignificant. But Earth had never truly been idle. In secret shipyards on Mars and deep within the asteroid belts, humanity's fleet had grown. Stealth cruisers glided silently through the void, massive dreadnoughts hidden beneath layers of ice and rock. The human military-industrial complex had thrived underground, waiting for a time when the galaxy's false peace would crumble. The broadcast interrupted the moment of quiet. The Varaxian High Council was preparing a summit to address the growing unrest. The galaxy waited, uncertain if peace could be saved or if war was inevitable. Marcus turned away from the screens and approached a sleek console. "Initiate Protocol Alpha," he commanded. Deep within the Earth's command bunker, a message was sent, a coded beacon to humanity's scattered allies beyond the solar system. In the void, where starlight barely pierced the darkness, a small Psi-Leth vessel drifted near the wreckage of the destroyed moon. Kayla's crew gathered in the war room, watching satellite images as dust and debris settled into orbit. "This is no longer about survival," Kayla declared, her eyes burning. "It is a call to arms." Across the galaxy, other species listened. The fragile threads of the Concord were unraveling. At the edge of known space, a sudden flash lit up the sensors of a hidden human scout ship. The message from Earth crackled through the comm. "Prepare. The wolf awakens." Captain Liara Kwan stood on the bridge, her gaze steady as the stars slid past the viewport. For generations, humans had prepared for this moment, not out of lust, for conquest, but a deep-seated belief that peace without readiness was a lie. "Tell the fleet," she said softly. "It's time, back on Varaxia Prime, the seat of the hegemony's power." Chancellor Varek stood before a massive hollow display of the galaxy. His face was cold, but the cracks in his composure were visible to those who looked closely. "We have maintained peace for 3,000 years, he intoned, "but now it is threatened by rebellion and lawlessness." His advisors nodded, but worry shadowed their features. "Shall we strike harder?" one asked. "No," Varek replied. We will crush the flames before they spread, but we must also beware the wolf in the darkness. His words hung heavy in the chamber. The humans watched and waited. The first skirmishes broke out near the outer rim worlds. Hit-and-run raids by Syleth insurgents, brutal responses from Varaxian forces. The galaxy's old wounds bled anew, but humanity was different. While others panicked, they moved with precision. Covert operatives sabotaged supply lines. Intelligence agents secured allies among disenfranchised species. In the shadows of forgotten outposts, humans rebuilt their arsenal. The war the galaxy feared was no longer a distant rumor. It was coming, and when it arrived, it would burn brighter than any star. The skies over the shattered moon hung heavy with silence. A silence so profound it seemed to scream. What remained of the Syleth mining colony was a twisted nightmare of scorched rock, vaporized cities, and cratered plains. The orbital bombardment had left nothing untouched. Billions of lives were extinguished in moments, their screams lost forever to the void. Yet far from the ashes, the rebellion was far from broken. In the command deck of the Syleth flagship Velkara, General Kayla clenched her fists as reports flooded in. The Varaxian strike was more devastating than anyone expected. Entire fleets had been dispatched to support the bombardment. The scale of destruction was meant to be a warning, not just to the Syleth, but to every dissatisfied species across the galaxy. But the reaction was the opposite. Across communications channels, bursts of defiance erupted like wildfire. The Syleth rallied their scattered forces while nearby species long suppressed by the Varaxian regime quietly slipped into rebellion. The fragile peace was fracturing, and war was no longer a whisper, it was a roar. "We will not bend," Kayla declared. "They may have broken our home, but they will never break our spirit." Her voice echoed in the cramped war room, her officers exchanging grim nods. This was no longer a fight for resources or territory. It was a battle for survival and honor. Far from the turmoil, in the outer reaches of the Orion expanse, a human stealth cruiser drifted silently through the void. Captain Liara Kwan stood at the command console, eyes fixed on a flickering hologram of the shattered moon. Varaxian forces overreacted, her tactical officer said. They want to scare everyone back into submission. Liara shook her head. They've just lit the fuse on a powder keg. The cruiser's comm crackled. A message from Earth's lunar command arrived, encrypted and urgent. Prepare for Phase 2. The galaxy is breaking. Act accordingly. Liara's lips curled in a grim smile. The humans had waited a long time for this moment. For centuries, they had watched the galaxy stagnate beneath a forced peace, a peace that robbed every species of their strength and will to survive. War was inevitable, and humanity was ready. Signal the fleet, Liara ordered. We move at dawn. On Varaxia Prime, the once glorious capital of the hegemony, the mood was grim. Chancellor Varric sat in his council chamber, surrounded by senior advisors and military commanders. The holomap before them flickered with data, news of rebellion, strikes, and uprisings spreading like wildfire. We cannot allow this chaos to consume us, Varric said, his voice steady despite the pressure. The shattered moon was a necessary demonstration, but it was only the beginning. His chief strategist, a sharp-eyed woman named Delara, leaned forward. If we escalate, the galaxy will turn against us completely. Our own allies question the wisdom of such brutality. Then we do not escalate, Varric replied coldly. We finish. Meanwhile, on the fringes of the galaxy, whispers of humanity's return spread quickly. For centuries, humans had been a ghost story, remnants of a brutal past, a species that once nearly consumed itself in endless war. Their absence had lulled the galaxy into a false sense of security, but no longer. The Solar Accord, an alliance of non-Viraxian species, had quietly formed under human guidance. From the shadowy boardrooms of Throji merchant princes to the secret councils of the outcast Dran clans, Old enemies found new reasons to unite. "Humans are not just back," murmured Ambassador Renkra of the Throji. "They bring a storm we have not felt in millennia." On a secret base hidden within the dense jungles of Trisal, human officers gathered around a holographic war table. Plans were being drawn up for covert operations to disrupt Varaxian communications and supply routes. These missions would be swift surgical strikes designed to cripple the hegemony's ability to respond effectively. Lieutenant Soren Valak, a veteran of Earth's long-lost wars, tapped a target on the map. "They rely on outdated protocols and bureaucracy. We'll hit their soft spots and watch their empire crumble from within." A younger soldier asked nervously, "Are we really ready to go to war after all this time?" Soren's eyes were hard. "We've never stopped preparing. The galaxy forgot what humans are capable of. We're about to remind them." Back on the front lines, the first battle erupted near the gas giant Cerinthos. Rebel Silith ships, augmented, with human technology and advisors, ambushed a Varaxian patrol. The fight was brutal, close-quarters combat that shattered the illusion of peace. Varaxian commanders were shocked. Their centuries of dominance seemed to unravel overnight. The swift, ruthless tactics of the humans and their allies defied every expectation. On board the rebel flagship, Kayla watched as the enemy flagship exploded in a brilliant fireball. Her heart pounded, not just with triumph, but with a deep, ancient hunger awakened in her veins. The war had returned to the galaxy, and humanity had welcomed it. The Galactic Council chamber, once a place of calm diplomacy, now crackled with tension. The chamber, suspended in orbit above the neutral world of Polyra Prime, was packed with delegates from dozens of species. The Varaxian High Council was desperate to contain the spreading rebellion, but the balance of power was shifting faster than anyone could predict. At the center of the storm sat the human envoy, Ambassador Elias Grant, tall, sharp-eyed, with a quiet intensity that demanded attention. For centuries, humanity had been a shadow at the edges of galactic politics. Now, they were stepping into the light. Grant's voice cut through the murmurs. "The era of enforced peace is over. You can deny it, punish the rebels, or try to silence us, but the truth remains. Peace without strength is a cage. It breeds weakness, resentment, and eventually chaos." The room grew silent. Behind him, a holographic display flickered to life, showing the newly unveiled human fleet, ships unlike anything seen before. Sleek, adaptive vessels armed with plasma lances and quantum missiles, built for speed, precision, and endurance. The images sent ripples of shock through the assembled delegates. The Varaxian Chancellor Varek narrowed his eyes. "Your fleets were hidden for centuries. You were a myth. Now you threaten the conquered and its peace. Why?" Grant's answer was simple. "Because peace enforced by fear is a lie. We watched as the galaxy grew soft, as culture and strength were crushed under the weight of bureaucrats and tyrants. We chose exile to rebuild ourselves, stronger, faster, smarter. We did not return to conquer, but to remind the galaxy what it means to survive." Whispers erupted across the chamber. Some called it arrogance, others a call to arms. As debate raged, a quiet figure slipped through the crowd. Kayla, the Silith general, cloaked in the shadows of her people's rebellion. She found Grant after the session. "You speak of strength," she said, voice low but fierce. "But strength without honor is destruction. How do we ensure we don't become what we fight against?" Grant looked at her steadily. "By fighting for something bigger than ourselves. By uniting those who refuse to live in fear." Together, they began forging the Solar Accord, an alliance of species disillusioned with the old order and inspired by humanity's return. Back on Earth, the news of the Solar Accord's formation was met with a mixture of relief and resolve. At Lunar Command Center, Admiral Claire O'Neill studied the reports. "The Concord's grip is slipping," she said to her officers. "But the Varaxians will not surrender easily." Her second-in-command, Captain Malik Reyes, frowned. "The galaxy is watching us now. If we fail to lead decisively, the Accord will fracture before it even takes shape." Claire nodded. Then we must show them what humanity means by strength and leadership. Across the border worlds, the first joint operations began. Human and allied ships conducted raids that crippled Varaxian supply lines and communication arrays. Each mission was a calculated strike, designed not only to weaken the enemy but to inspire hope among oppressed populations. On board the human flagship Resolute, Captain Liara Kwan prepared her fleet for their most daring operation yet, a coordinated assault on Varaxia Prime's outer defenses. We're not just fighting ships, she told her officers. We're fighting centuries of fear and complacency. This battle will echo through history. Meanwhile, the Varaxian leadership scrambled to respond. Chancellor Varek convened an emergency war council, tension crackling in the air. Our enemies rally behind humans, he growled. They exploit our weaknesses. We must strike back, swiftly, decisively. But voices of caution emerged. Delara, the chief strategist, warned. A brutal crackdown could unite the galaxy against us permanently. The humans bring more than firepower. They bring a vision. Varek slammed his fist on the table. Then we will burn that vision to ashes. The heart of the Solar Accord. Tensions simmered beneath the surface. Not every species trusted humanity's sudden rise. Old rivalries and fears lingered, threatening to unravel fragile alliances. Ambassador Renkra of the Throji voiced his doubts in a private meeting. Humans speak of unity, but their methods remind me of old empires. Strong, yes, but ruthless. What guarantee do we have they won't replace one tyranny with another? Grant met his gaze calmly. Because we fight with our scars, not our swords. Because we know what happens when power is unchecked. Their uneasy truce held, but the question remained. Could the Solar Accord survive the fires of war? The first skirmishes around Varaxia Prime exploded into fierce battles. Human and allied forces used hit-and-run tactics to undermine the Varaxian stronghold. The war was no longer distant politics. It was brutal, bloody, and personal. In the heat of battle, human soldiers revealed the heart of their strength, adaptability. They fought not just with technology, but with relentless determination, improvising in ways others could not. Lieutenant Soren Valek led a ground assault, his squad navigating the ruins of a Varaxian fortress. We're not just fighting enemies, he told his team. We're fighting for the future of every species shackled by this false peace. As the war escalated, the galaxy watched. Hope and fear danced together like twin stars, illuminating the uncertain path ahead. The Solar Accord was no longer just a dream. It was a force reshaping the galaxy's destiny. And humanity, long silent and underestimated, stood at its heart, ready to lead. The war had broken the illusion of peace, and now the galaxy trembled beneath the storm humanity had helped unleash. Captain Liara Kwan stood on the bridge of the flagship Resolute, eyes scanning the tactical display. Fleets were converging near. The Varaxian supply hub in the Sorrento system, an intricate web of mining stations, repair yards, and resource depots, vital to the hegemony's war machine. This is where we cut the head off the serpent, Liara said, voice calm but steely. If we sever their supply lines here, the entire front will crumble. Her officers exchanged nods. The plan was simple in its boldness. A lightning strike, swift and brutal, designed to cripple the enemy before they could react. Below decks, the soldiers prepared for battle. Among them was Lieutenant Soren Valek, whose voice carried a mix of excitement and resolve as he rallied his squad. Remember what we're fighting for, he said. Not just for Earth, not just for the Solar Accord, but for every soul in this galaxy tired of living under fear. The transport shuttles hummed softly as they launched, slipping through the black void toward the target. The Varaxian commanders had expected a direct confrontation, massive fleets clashing in slow, brutal engagements like those of centuries past. They did not anticipate the subtlety and speed of human warfare. The Resolute and its fleet moved like shadows, striking supply convoys and communication arrays with surgical precision. Human pilots darted through asteroid fields and nebulae, ambushing enemy vessels before disappearing again. The first explosion erupted near a Varaxian cruiser, A bright flare followed by a chain reaction that left the massive ship drifting, crippled. On board the Varaxian flagship Zephyr, Admiral Carrick watched the carnage unfold with growing frustration. "They fight like wolves," he growled. "Fast, brutal, unpredictable. They do not seek to conquer. They seek to dismantle." His officers scrambled to respond, but every attempt to trap the human fleet failed. The humans seemed to anticipate every move, striking supply lines faster than the Varaxians could reinforce. Carrick's voice grew cold. They must be stopped, no matter the cost. Amid the chaos, human operatives carried out covert sabotage on key installations. Lieutenant Mira Solis led a team onto a heavily guarded Varaxian orbital platform. "Disable their communications," Mira ordered. "We cut their eyes and ears." The team moved swiftly, planting charges on relay nodes and hacking into enemy networks. Explosions rocked the station, cutting off Varaxian fleets from command. But the mission came at a price. As they prepared to evacuate, Varaxian reinforcements arrived, forcing a desperate firefight. Mira's last radio transmission was calm despite the gunfire. "Hold position. Evacuation delayed. We're buying time." Back on the Resolute, Liara received the distress call. Her face hardened. "We can't leave them behind," she said. The fleet shifted course, engaging Varaxian forces to cover the rescue. The battle raged across space and surface alike. The humans fought not just with weapons, but with tenacity and cunning. Their tactics baffled the enemy: hit-and-run strikes, ambushes from unexpected angles, and relentless pressure that wore down even the most disciplined troops. "Human soldiers, adapt," Lieutenant Valek explained during a brief lull. "Where others rely on brute force, we use our brains, and we never stop learning." The Silith rebels fought alongside the humans, their fierce warriors inspired by Kayla's leadership. On the bridge of the Velkara, Kayla's voice was steady over the comms. "Hold the line. This fight is our declaration. We will not be erased." In the midst of battle, she found herself face to face with a Varaxian officer, an old friend turned enemy. Their eyes met through the chaos, a silent question hanging between them. What has peace cost us? As the dust settled, the humans and their allies claimed victory. The Varaxian supply hub was in ruins, their fleet scattered and reeling. But the cost was heavy. Lieutenant Mira's team was lost, their sacrifice etched into the memories of those who survived. In the quiet moments after battle, Captain Liara stood alone on the observation deck gazing at the stars. "The war is no longer about winning or losing," she murmured. "It's about reminding the galaxy who we are." Her voice carried a fierce pride, but beneath it was something older, a hunger that had lain dormant for centuries. The hunt had begun, the wolf was awake, and the galaxy would never be the same. The victory at Cerinthos had shifted the war's momentum, but it had also pulled humanity and the Solar Accord deeper into a web of politics and old grudges. In the neutral world of Visara, beneath the gleaming domes of the Accord's Provisional Council, Ambassador Elias Grant sat stiffly in the vast chamber. Delegates argued endlessly around him, voices raised and tempers flaring. "Your humans bring war, not peace," hissed Threxel Lord Carthun, his reptilian eyes narrowing. "You disrupt the balance. We trusted the conquered, even if imperfect." Grant's gaze didn't waver. "The balance was a cage. You all know it. This conflict is inevitable. The question is who leads it, and who survives." Across the room, murmurs spread. The alliance was fracturing under the weight of distrust. In a shadowed corner, Kayla observed silently. The Silith warrior's pride warred with the cold realities of politics. "We fight for freedom," she told a human envoy in passing. "But freedom is meaningless if we betray our allies." Her words hung heavy. The newly formed Solar Accord was a fragile patchwork of species united by a common enemy, but divided by centuries of history and suspicion. On Earth, Dr. Marcus Renard stood in a stark laboratory, watching a holographic display of recent battles. His mind, sharp as ever despite the decades, churned with concern. "The war isn't just about firepower," he said to a nearby scientist. "It's about winning hearts and minds. If we alienate the galaxy's species, we lose everything." Marcus had lived through humanity's darkest wars. He understood the hunger for power and the dangers of becoming what they fought against. "We need diplomats and soldiers both," he added, "or this war will consume us all." Meanwhile, on the battlefront, Captain Liara Kwan prepared her fleet for the next phase, securing alliances beyond the Solar Accord. Intelligence reports hinted that several neutral species were on the fence, waiting to see which side would emerge stronger. "Convince them," Liara told her officers. "Show them we're not just fighters, we're protectors." Her first stop was the Zhran clans, nomadic warrior tribes long ostracized by the conquered. Their homeworld, a harsh desert planet filled with sprawling canyons and endless dunes, was a crucible of survival. Liara met with clan matriarch Saria, a woman as fierce as the desert winds. "We respect strength," Saria said, her voice like gravel. "But strength without honor is nothing. Why should we trust humans?" Liara looked her in the eye. "Because we remember what it means to fight for home. Because we know what it is to lose everything and rise again." After days of negotiation, a tentative alliance formed. The Zhran warriors would lend their speed and ferocity to the Solar Accord's cause, an invaluable asset in the battles to come. Back in Varaxian territory, Chancellor Varric watched the alliance building with growing fury. "They are gathering forces," he spat. "If we do not strike first, the war will be lost." His generals urged caution, warning that the galaxy's eyes were watching closely. But Varric was blinded by pride and fear. "We will show them," he vowed. "Show them that the conquered still rules." The Varaxian counterattack came swiftly and mercilessly. A fleet twice the size of the human-led forces descended on the outer rim colony of Narathis, a critical supply point for the Solar Accord. The battle was fierce and chaotic. Human ships moved with precision, but the sheer number of Varaxian warships pressed them hard. Amid the chaos, Lieutenant Soren Valak led a daring strike team to disable the enemy's flagship's shield generators. "We hit their heart," he ordered. "Then the fleet falls." The mission was perilous, but Soren's team succeeded, sacrificing themselves to give their fleet a chance to regroup. In the aftermath, as the wounded retreated, Ambassador Grant addressed the council again, his voice stronger. "We face a turning point," he said. "This war will decide not just the fate of nations, but the soul of the galaxy. We can fracture under pressure, or unite and create a future worth fighting for." In the shadows of Varaxia Prime, whispers of rebellion stirred even within the hegemony's ranks. Some generals questioned the Chancellor's ruthless approach, fearing it would only hasten their downfall. Chancellor Varric's grip on power was tightening, but so were the cracks beneath his throne. Meanwhile, Kayla prepared her people for a harsh truth. The war would not be won by sheer force alone. "We fight in the light and the shadows," she told her commanders. "We must be warriors and diplomats. We must be the storm and the shelter." Her resolve hardened. The shattered moon had been the spark, but the fire would consume the galaxy if they were not careful. On Earth, Dr. Renard's warnings echoed, in the halls of power. "We must lead with wisdom, or the wolf we've unleashed will devour us all." And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, the silent fleets gathered, ready to shape the fate of the stars. The galaxy was a powder keg, and every flicker of distrust threatened to ignite it. Ambassador Elias Grant sat in the dimly lit chamber of Pallyra Prime, staring across the table at a representative from the Zerath Syndicate, one of the most powerful mercantile factions in the Outer Rim. The Syndicate's warships had remained neutral until now, but their allegiance was up for negotiation. "Humans speak of unity," the Zerath envoy hissed, "but our people survive by exploiting chaos. Why should we bind ourselves to a fragile alliance?" Grant met his gaze evenly. "Because chaos alone breeds ruin. Together you gain strength, protection, and a voice against the hegemony's tyranny." The envoy smirked. And what if your humans become the new tyrants? Grant's jaw tightened. Then we will be held accountable. This alliance is built on mutual respect and vigilance. For long moments, silence filled the room. Then the envoy nodded slowly. Very well. But understand this. Trust is earned, not given. Outside the council halls, Kayla paced the corridors of the Syleth embassy, her thoughts heavy. The fragile alliances, the suspicions, the endless political dance. It was as deadly as any battlefield. She remembered the shattered moon, the screams, the fire. That pain had united her people. But now, standing amidst these negotiations, she wondered if the galaxy's fractured pride would undo all their sacrifices. Her communicator buzzed. The message was terse. Viraxian forces amassing near Thraxis, suspected assault imminent. Kayla's eyes narrowed. The hegemony was striking back, hard. On the desert world of Thraxis, the newly allied Zran clans prepared to defend their home. Matriarch Saria oversaw the fortifications, her warriors moving with fierce determination. Today we fight not just for Thraxis, she declared, but for every species that dares to stand. Liaraquan's fleet arrived in orbit, ready to support the ground forces. The humans and Zran had forged an alliance built on respect and shared purpose, but the battle ahead would test their resolve. The assault came with the fury of a solar storm. Viraxian warships emerged from hyperspace, their weapons blazing. The skies above Thraxis ignited as orbital bombardments began. On the ground, the Zran warriors clashed with Viraxian troops. Blades and plasma rifles met in brutal combat. Despite their courage, the defenders struggled against the better-equipped invaders. Liara coordinated orbital strikes targeting enemy supply lines and command ships. "Hold the line," she urged over comms. "We will not let Thraxis fall. Back." In Pelira Prime, the Council was rocked by a new crisis. Several member worlds threatened to withdraw from the Solar Accord, unwilling to commit further to a war that was growing bloodier and more unpredictable. Grant's voice grew resolute. "This is the crucible of trust. We either stand together or fall apart." He proposed a bold plan, a unified fleet under joint command, symbolizing true cooperation across species and cultures. The motion passed by a narrow margin. On Earth, Dr. Marcus Renard monitored the escalating conflict with growing concern. "The war is becoming something different," he told his colleagues. "It's not just about territory or power, it's about identity, about whether the galaxy remembers who it is." His warnings echoed across command centers and diplomatic channels. The wolf was hungry, and it was awakening old fears. Meanwhile, on Viraxia Prime, Chancellor Varric faced mounting pressure from his generals and advisors. "We must end this war quickly," one urged. "Our resources dwindle and the Accord grows stronger." Varric's eyes burned with stubborn pride. "Then we end it on our terms. The galaxy will kneel, or burn." But even in his halls, whispers of dissent grew louder. Some believed the Chancellor's ruthlessness was dooming the hegemony. Amidst the turmoil, Kayla led a covert mission deep into Viraxian space. Her objective: sabotage key infrastructure to delay reinforcements headed for Thraxis. Her team moved like ghosts, slipping past patrols and disabling communication arrays. But as they prepared to exfiltrate, they were ambushed. In the firefight, Kayla faced a choice: risk her team to complete the mission or retreat and save lives. She chose both. With cold precision, she ordered her squad to cover the retreat while she stayed behind, planting charges and hacking the systems. Her final transmission crackled through the comms. "The war is bigger than one life. We fight for the many." The explosion rocked the sector, buying precious hours for the defenders of Thraxis. But Kayla's fate remained uncertain. In the aftermath of the battle, the unified Solar Accord fleet took form, a symbol of hope and resolve. Ships from countless species sailed together: human, Salith, Zran, Throji, and more, bound by a fragile trust. Ambassador Grant watched the fleet assemble, a spark of hope in his eyes. The crucible is not just fire, he said quietly. It is what shapes us. We are forged by this war, not broken by it. The galaxy was watching. The war had entered a new phase, one where battles were fought not just with weapons, but with trust, sacrifice, and the fragile bonds of alliance. And as the wolf prowled the stars, it was no longer alone. The galaxy held its breath. The unified Solar Accord fleet, a tapestry of countless species and cultures, gathered at the edge of Viraxian space. The sun glinted off the polished hulls of warships, reflecting a fragile hope that had taken root. Amid the chaos of war, Captain Liara Kwan stood on the bridge of the Resolute, the flagship's core humming with quiet power. Her eyes swept the vast expanse of ships, each one a promise to fight, to endure, to reclaim the future. We stand on the brink, she said softly to her officers. The Viraxian hegemony will not yield without a fight. This is our moment. Let's make it count. In the cold halls of Viraxia Prime, Chancellor Varric's fury had turned to desperation. Reports from the front were grim. The unified fleet's strikes had crippled key supply lines and shattered morale. We face annihilation, his chief advisor warned. The Accord grows stronger every day. Varric slammed his fist on the table. Then we end this war at its source, deploy the Black Suns. The Black Suns were an elite cadre of assassins and covert operatives, shadow warriors trained to destabilize and dismantle from within. Their mission: infiltrate the Solar Accord, sow discord, and destroy the fragile alliance from the inside. Back in the Solar Accord Council chambers, the atmosphere was tense. Ambassador Elias Grant convened an emergency meeting. We face a new threat, he warned, not just on the battlefield but within our ranks. We must remain vigilant. Kayla, though still recovering from her near-fatal mission, stood with quiet resolve. Our strength is in unity. We cannot allow fear to fracture us. Her words were met with cautious nods, but trust was a fragile thing. On the frontline planet of Narathis, Lieutenant Soren Valak prepared his squad for a critical operation. Intelligence had uncovered a Black Sun cell embedded within the local. Resistance, a poison in their veins. We root out the enemy within, Soren declared. No traitor will weaken us. The mission was brutal. Soren's team hunted shadows through the city's winding streets where every corner could conceal an assassin. When they finally confronted the Black Sun operatives, the fight was fierce and merciless. Lives were lost, trust shattered, but the threat was neutralized. Meanwhile, Captain Liara led a decisive strike against the Viraxian capital's orbital defenses. Using a combination of stealth drones and electronic warfare, her fleet breached the outer perimeter. As the battle raged, human pilots demonstrated the hallmark of their species: adaptability. When enemy countermeasures scrambled their systems, they improvised, hacking enemy ships to turn the tide. The Resolute itself came under fire, its shields flickering under the assault. Liara's voice cut through the chaos. Hold fast. We fight. As one. Amid the battle, Kayla's name echoed through the communications net. She had survived the ambush on Viraxian soil and returned with critical intelligence on Black Sun operations. Her bravery inspired many. But the wounds she carried, both visible and hidden, reminded everyone of the war's cost. At a remote outpost, Ambassador Grant received word of a surprising development. Several key Viraxian generals had defected, weary of Chancellor Varric's tyranny. The defectors offered a chance, a secret alliance to overthrow Varric from within. Grant's mind raced. Could they trust these turncoats? Was the war about to end or plunge deeper into chaos? In a private meeting aboard the Resolute, Grant and Kayla debated the risks. Betrayal breeds more betrayal, Kayla warned. We must be careful not to let hope blind us. Grant nodded. But every war is fought in shadows. We have no choice but to step into the dark if we want to find the light. The turning tide was underway. With defectors providing inside information, the Solar Accord launched coordinated strikes that dismantled Viraxian command structures. Varric's hold slipped as his enemies closed in. But victory came at a price. Narathis lay in ruins. The sacrifices weighed heavily on the Allies. Every lost soldier was a reminder that peace was still a distant dream. In the final hours of the battle, as the Solar Accord fleet tightened its grip around Varaxia Prime, Captain Liara stood before her crew. "We fight not for glory," she said. "We fight for the galaxy's soul. Together we will ensure it survives." The war's tide had turned. The wolf no longer hunted alone. It led a pack united by hope, strength, and an unyielding will to survive. The void outside Varaxia Prime was filled with fire and fury. The final battle had erupted, a symphony of explosions and laser fire echoing across the stars. The Solar Accord fleet bore down on the hegemony's heart, their combined might poised to end a war that had consumed generations. Captain Liara Kwan stood on the bridge of the Resolute, her gaze fixed on the swirling chaos beyond the viewport. Around her, officers moved with quiet purpose, each aware that this battle would define the galaxy's future. "All ships prepare for coordinated strike," Liara commanded. "This is the culmination of everything we've fought for. Let's finish it." Inside Varaxia Prime's capital, Chancellor Varric paced his throne room, surrounded by shattered relics of his fading power. The defector's betrayal had torn through his forces, and the Black Sun's sabotage had failed. "They think they can break me," Varric snarled, voice echoing in the Grand Chamber. "They will learn the true meaning of fear." But as the enemy fleet closed in, the once mighty Chancellor found himself isolated, a relic of a dying order. Amidst the battle, Kayla moved with the precision and ferocity that had become her hallmark. Leading a strike team onto the planet's surface, she targeted Varric's command centers and communication arrays. The ruins of the shattered moon had long ago hardened her spirit. Now the fate of millions rested on her shoulders. With every step, Kayla felt the weight of her people's hopes and their pain. On the surface, Lieutenant Soren Valek's squad fought alongside Silith warriors and Dran fighters, pushing through the last pockets of resistance. "Hold the line," Soren shouted over the din. "For every fallen friend, we fight harder." Their combined forces tore through the enemy, their unity a testament to the power of alliance and trust. Back in orbit, Captain Liara coordinated the fleet's final maneuvers. The Varaxian flagship Dreadspire, a monstrous symbol of hegemony, might, loomed ahead. "We take that ship down," Liara said, voice steady. "It's their command hub, and their last hope." The battle was brutal. The Resolute led the charge, weaving through hailstorms of enemy fire. Human pilots demonstrated unmatched adaptability, turning Varaxian weapons against their creators. Inside the Dreadspire, Chancellor Varric faced Kayla in a final confrontation. The two former allies, now enemies, locked eyes, the weight of betrayal hanging thick. "This war was your undoing," Varric spat. "Your defiance will cost you everything." Kayla's voice was cold steel. "It is you who underestimated the power of hope." Their clash was swift and fierce, a battle not just of strength but of wills. As the Dreadspire faltered under the Solar Accord's assault, Varric's forces crumbled. The Chancellor's reign ended in flames and silence. Across the galaxy, systems, once under hegemony rule, celebrated cautiously, aware that peace was fragile but possible. In the war's aftermath, Ambassador Elias Grant addressed the Provisional Council. "We have faced the darkness together and emerged stronger." The wolf we feared was not a monster but a guardian. He spoke of rebuilding, of healing fractured alliances, and of forging a future where diversity was strength, not division. Kayla, now hailed as a hero, stood among her people on a reclaimed Silith world. "We fought for freedom," she said, voice steady. "But now we must fight for peace." Her words echoed through the hearts of many, a reminder that war was only the beginning. On Earth, Dr. Marcus Renard watched the new dawn with cautious optimism. "The wolf is at rest," he mused. "But we must never forget what it means to protect what we love." Captain Liara looked out at the stars once more, the void now quiet. "The galaxy is vast," she said softly, "and our journey has only just begun." With the war behind them, humanity and its allies faced an uncertain future, one ripe with hope, challenges, and the promise of a new era. The war had ended, The peace they forged would shape the destiny of the stars. And humanity, once a wild, card in a tired galaxy, had found its place, not as conquerors but as guardians of a fragile, shining hope. End.